Hello, and welcome to Speedify Live's 18th episode. I'm your host, Alex Giesis. I'm here with Jeff Huntley, who is a very special guest who has some really cool stuff to show and explain. So the point of this live stream, what am I saying? Is to bring you interesting stuff about how to up your live streaming, how to work from home better. And we have the master here because Jeff has been successfully living out of a van in Australia, doing the van life thing, bonding a lot of internet connections so that he can work wherever he is. And hi, Jeff. Thanks for joining us.
No problem, Alex. It's good to finally catch up. So a lot of internet connections. Last count is 6 internet connections. And when Starlink happens, if any SpaceX employees are listening, hook me up. It'd be great to go to 7. Traveling around Australia in a van. And internet connectivity is really important to me because I work remotely. And
speaking of working remotely, it looks like you're outside right now. Is that?
I am indeed outside right now.
Oh, that's
I'm connected to your Sydney endpoint. I have 2 setups. When I'm near the van, I have a really big setup. But when I'm just like sitting in a chair, I'm just like a backpack setup of like a portable router plus the inbuilt cellular in the iPad.
Nice. Well, it's a lovely office you have. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a software engineer by trade. I work remotely by the internet. I'm very fortunate that I can work from anywhere. Recently, I've been doing a lot of work in security research with the Australian government into some of their responses to the COVID with digital contact tracing. But during the day, I work for a company called Gitpod, and Gitpod allows you to do software development from any device. I could throw this laptop in the river over there. And I just go get another laptop, and because all the software development happens in the cloud, there's no setup time. It's
a complete development environment in the browser.
Correct, and it's just like this standard software development environment that you would have on your local computer. In our software development industry, being able to just click a button and get a software development environment instantly it makes sense, but not many people do it. Not many people do it. Like I've had clients where I've joined, and it's been a month. They paid me a month of salary, and I haven't done any productive work because they still haven't given me a laptop, or how to set up their development environment isn't actually documented. It's a really, really common. So it's a huge problem in the software industry, and we're here to help fix it.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. I have an old Mac, and I can no longer build Speedify on my Mac. I know I should just go out and buy a new Mac, and with an M1 it'll grind through it. But it seems like it should just be, built in the cloud or whatever. Well, why does it matter how old my laptop is or what operating system I'm on? Why does that have anything to do with what I can build?
It should not matter. It absolutely should not matter. Like I YOLO upgraded to the latest version of Mac OS. And normally you would never do that because you might break your ability to do software development locally. But because all my software development happens in a browser, it really doesn't matter at all. So I just upgraded it and didn't care because I knew as long as I had a web browser, I could do my work. That is a feeling that is pretty unique. You've upgraded your devices and you're like, oh, I'm going to lose a couple of days of productivity. What if it doesn't work? So you get this entire change aversion going on.
Yeah, that's cool. So tell us about the van.
Yeah, sure. So it kind of started Yeah, it kind of started about 2 years ago. And the van is just 7 meter standard transport van, medium wheelbase.
Here, is it okay
And
if I?
it
Is that the back of the van that I'm showing here?
that's the back of the van. Perfect. Okay, so something that's interesting about the van is one thing I learned when you're on the road, you kind of get these anxieties like, oh, I don't have enough water, I don't have enough solar, I don't have enough battery, I don't have enough internet. And whilst a lot of people, when they would go camping, they want to go detach, right? Really, what I want is I want some of the comforts of home to come with me. So you don't want that. So it's completely different. So you want some of the mod cons to come with you in life. So with this van and the setup specifically, like for the internet, it's got exceptional internet. Internet in Australia is stereotypically really, really bad. And up there up in the top right hand corner there's all the different antennas. So there's 3 different LTE modems, LTE4 modems. Each have their own dedicated antenna.
And is that
And there's
3 different carriers?
3 different carriers, right?
Yeah.
And they all get merged together. And in Speedify, I configured the appropriate data cap on each one of those. But that's like the lowest tier in the priority in Speedify. From there, I have a Wi-Fi. Those 2 little candlesticks in there is USB Wi-Fi adapter connected to high gain external antennas. So that means if I'm parked out the front of a friend's place or a family member, I can use that internet over the those 4G connections. But also in the front driver of the van, I also have a 5G connection. So they all get merged together into a single internet connection. And I find diversity of carriers is what matters. People think like, how much speed are you going to get? It's not about speed. It's about turning 5 or 6 terrible internet connections into one salvageable internet connection.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to an interesting talk by a Comcast executive, actually, who said that he'd been studying what was good internet. And it turned out good internet was 25 megabits to every device you're using right now. So if you're just using one computer, it's 25 megabits. But if you have 4 friends over and you're watching, Netflix on a TV, then good internet might be 125 megabits. But for a normal person doing work, if you can get up to 25 megabits, you're in pretty good shape, right?
You're in very good shape. Like having all those internet links is very handy because I do video production work. It's handy just to upload that data really fast. But like for my daily software development task, because it's happening in a web browser, I don't actually need much network connection. If you're typically doing software development on a laptop, you would have to download all these dependencies, like from npm, to be able to do your job. And there's high return trip, like there's a lot of packages and there's a lot of return trip latency, and that's a killer. But because I do software development essentially in the Google data center, all I need is no packet loss and enough to sustain a serial connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, just text terminal, text terminal. So it's lovely.
That's cool. All right. Are there any other pictures here I should? You want to talk about, like is the network diagram worth?
Yeah, the network diagram is worth going into. So this is the diagram of the networking in the van. So in the main box at the top right hand corner, there's a priority of networks. So you've got the inbuilt. So we've got the USB Wi-Fi adapter, which is used for friendly network connections. Starlink, if anyone's got any connections to make it happen sooner, please, it'd be awesome. Then I have a 5G fast mile modem. So 5G, the modem I have doesn't have external antennas. It's all inbuilt internal. And 5G's reception isn't that great. Like you can only really get 5G if you're very close to a tower. So it's not really useful for camping. But when you're in the city, there's 5G connections everywhere. So it's really good for urban camping. Like if you're near the city, and that has unlimited data usage on that connection. So that turns actually is really my primary network connection, is that Optus 5G connection. And then from there, if that's not available, depending on how I configure it, I have my array of LTE modems. Now, each one of those comes out with an Ethernet connection, and those Ethernet connections go into a Intel NUC. If you go to AliExpress, Alex, you can search for pfSense routers, and those pfSense routers, you get some really bespoke stuff. Like you're looking at industrial computers, and some of those stuff it will have like 8 network connections, 8 network ports. So I'm using one of them, and I just run Speedify and Ubuntu. I merge all those connections into Speedify and Ubuntu, and then I output back out again, and then I pipe that output into a router.
That's really neat. Yeah, the Intel NUC with all those Ethernet ports, that sounds amazing, right? People are always asking us, what's the best device to run Speedify on? And, you know, we have lots of devices and they all have pros and cons, but that sounds like it might be a winner.
Seriously, just go to AliExpress, search for pfSense routers. I think they're about 400 US, 300 US. And there's plenty of them. You don't need an i7. The i7's overkill. I have close to 800 watts of solar on the roof and a pretty amazing lithium battery setup. So I can go for i7. i7 uses a lot of power. Just get yourself like a little i5 type thing.
Yeah, that should be plenty. As long as it's 64-bit and has hardware encryption, but really everything Intel sells has all of those these days. So one question I know people were asking on Hacker News was, you know, why did you put the 5G at the lowest priority? Aren't they often the fastest connection?
Well, 5G at the lowest is because, well, Starlink isn't. It's typically it's either going to be Starlink or Optus. Like I don't have roof to put a Starlink internet connection on the roof of my van. Like the entire roof of the van is solar panels. And even if I was to put it on the roof of the van, that would cast the shadows on the solar panels, and you don't want shadows on solar panels. So it really is Starlink is something like if you head to out of that picture and go straight to the top. So my blog is ghuntley.com, and this is where you'll see this blog post. And at the top of the blog post, you'll see this.
Can we get the URL on screen?
And if you head right to the top of the blog post, there's this picture there. Right. And that picture is like myself. Right. Click on the GH.
Where do you want me to click?
On the top left-hand corner. On the top left corner, there's a GH logo. Yeah.
There we go.
See right there in the top right-hand corner is a picture of myself in a forest, and that there is I had minimal 4G and internet connectivity, and definitely no 5G internet connectivity. So it's either and or. So when I'm going to be using Starlink, I envision it's going to be a scenario where I pull it out of the van, I set it up, and I use it for the day, and then I put it back in at night when I sleep. So it's not a full-time setup, whereas the 5G is always running. So that's why it's just the order of priorities. And
So the priority is how much Speedify is going to use it. So you actually...
Correct.
It's not so much that you want to put the fastest up top, it's that you want to put the most expensive at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
And the one with the data cap. By the way, the picture at the bottom right is a little less exciting than it looks. It's a blog post about how Jeff showers and uses the bathroom while on the road.
It is. So yeah, there's everything on there. People always ask about toilets, showering, everything like that. That there is a fire tub. If you ever go camping, I highly recommend that you find yourself a cast iron bathtub. and carry it into a forest, and then like set a fire underneath and just look up into the stars. It's always a good party.
Nice. All right.
But if you open the expanding the hamburger menu
The hamburger.
over there and go to photos, we'll get away from that one.
So there he
So
is.
so that's that one there. So this is where diversity of network carriers is really important. In Australia, we have Telstra, and Telstra is the main carrier. And people think, oh yeah, Telstra is going to have the best reception. The answer is yes, but sometimes it's really strange. I was that's up near the Hampton State Forest in New South Wales, near the Blue Mountains in Katoomba, and I had no reception on Telstra, and I had the best reception on the worst carrier in Australia. And this is why the diversity of mobile carriers makes sense. It really matters.
Yeah.
It really is about taking bad network connections and making a salvageable network connection. And you just can't plan when you're on the road and traveling. You don't want to have any anxiety of where am I going to set up for the day, and I need to do work. Do I have internet? Will I have internet? Will I have food? Will I have water? Will there be electricity? You want to remove all those things from the equation. You just want to be able to drive to a nice place to set up a tent. So that's what the entire van looks like. There's absolutely no room up there for dishy.
Yeah, I see the solar panels. That's nice.
Yeah. The first tube there is that has fishing rods in it.
All right.
And the one on the other side is I haven't needed to yet, but that would be a large antenna, like a unidirectional antenna.
Huh. Or like a giant Yagi or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Would you believe there's actually an air conditioner under there?
Under where? Under the solar panels?
Under the solar panels, yeah.
Right.
There's 2 fans, so you can get an inflow and outflow, and an air conditioner in there as well. It's a very tight fit out. And it also means if you're in the city and you're camping, it looks more like a tradie van. Even though I'm talking about this and people will start to recognize the van in time, I guess. It looks more like a tradie van and less like a camper van.
Yeah. What is it? Is it a Ford Transit or?
It's an Iveco.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Oh. What did I do? Reload.
Reload. Second image over there.
This one with the purple thing?
One thing I've learned. Thank you. One thing I've learned is you want to have a dedicated space for your work or your work environment. So like right now, I'm just like here chilling on a chair, and this is going to be my work environment for the day. When I've got the van, I normally set up a tent, and in that gazebo tent there, I set up a table. That's an area on chair, and that's my workplace. And that way, you've got a workplace and you've got a home place. You have that separation between the two. Otherwise, things just blend into each other, and that's never great.
I'm getting jealous. This is fantastic, Jeff.
Thank you. So that picture there is, if you scroll all the way down, stop right there. That orange one. Those 3 photos there. That's the other side. That's the top end view of what that office was looking at. That's how I set up. These days I'm using an iPad over a normal computer, and I'm reducing the normal computer every day. Lovely.
Really? So I guess you're doing everything in the browser, so the iPad's fine?
iPad's lovely. Yeah.
It's the one of the newer ones with the M1 processor, or?
M1 13-inch. It has inbuilt cellular, which is lovely. And then I have a router in my backpack. That's lovely as well, and I merge them together with Speedify, and I can go essentially anywhere. I carried this chair and this iPad into a forest, like National Park, the Bunya Mountains, 2 weeks back, and I'm just like sitting there on an iPad. It was lovely.
All right. So, out in the woods and forests of Australia, as an American, I'm under the impression that every animal there is poisonous and trying to kill you.
It is like it's.
it
is. That's why I have a toilet in the van, because like if it's 1 a.m. in the middle of the night, 1 a.m. in the morning, and you need to go to the toilet, you got to be careful of those toilet spiders, dude, because they might bite you in the butt. So that's why you have a van, you have a toilet. Get yourself a composting toilet. They are the best. They do not smell, and I'm often traveling with my children, and I lock the van up during the night so they can't go out, and so if I'm sleeping, they can't go out, etc. It's a safety thing. It also means that I don't have to do toilet runs. So it's lovely. If you're going to be doing a van, especially with small kids, get yourself a composting toilet. Great idea. But toilet spiders, you got to be careful of them, especially those daddy long legs.
All right. Terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. Wildlife in it. Then again, a co-worker in Vancouver posted pictures of a black bear rolling down the streets, a brown bear rolling down the streets in Vancouver, and that was kind of terrifying. I would take toilet spiders over a bear any day.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, here in Philadelphia, we killed all of our wildlife, right? I mean, if you look, rattlesnakes were native to Philadelphia. There are no rattlesnakes here now. We just kind of wiped them out. I'm sure there were bears and stuff too, but it's, it's been an American city for over 400 years now. It's kind of cleared out. All right, cool. So how long have you been doing this now?
Started on the journey about 2 years ago. The blog post goes into the origins on the website, so ghuntley.com. Essentially, I looked at the cost of housing in Sydney, and I was in a relationship with me, and going through emotions of divorce and all those things. And reassessing life. I was already working remotely 2 years ago. I could see it's in the future of working remotely. I remembered reading, maybe 6, 8 years ago, a blog post about a Google engineer who was camping in a van, and he was using the facilities of the showers and everything at Google, and they would feed him, they'd shower him, they got all like gyms, and he was putting away lots of money.
That.
Yeah. And I never realized that at that time, like, yeah, that's interesting. That's a nice hack. And then when I went through basically turning over a new chapter, I was like, hey, wait a second, housing in Sydney is
The downside, I think the wind is hitting your microphone.
Yeah, so the median for Sydney housing now, the median for Sydney housing now is 1.1 million, like 900 to 1.1 million. And that makes no sense. That makes absolutely no sense, especially if you can work remotely.
Yeah.
You can pick yourself up a beautiful block of land. There's many places in Australia that's kind of like Montana. And if you've got really good internet and Starlink's coming, get yourself a large block of land and somewhere really nice and just work there instead of slaving away for a mortgage. Just live life a little bit differently.
Yeah, so Starlink can make a ton of sense out there, right? I mean, things are so far spread apart, right?
Yeah. Actually, this is going to be really interesting. what's actually going to happen with remote work, because people might have seen yesterday there was a whole bunch of tradies in Melbourne. They shut down the construction industry because of COVID. And there's a lot of videos coming out from yesterday where like a lot of people were out, like 8,000-ish people out shutting down the streets and like defying the police, and it turned a little bit violent. If you look at that, they can't work. Like remotely. They have to physically work. Like they have to go to a job to work. And there are a lot of people who can't work remotely. So we're entering. I think we're going to be entering in a social divide of those who can work remotely and those who cannot. And it's going to be very interesting to see like all these parcels of land that are available very cheaply. They may in the country, they may not be available very cheaply in 10 years' time, because people who can work remotely, who are on IT wages, can go out and buy acres and acres of land and build their dream house for a fraction of the cost of a house in Sydney.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Theoretically, this should all even out. The prices of houses in Sydney should start dropping.
No, it's not happening.
At least stop going up so fast.
We've had 25, 30 years without a correction, so yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, actually, let's talk about stream emergencies. Do you have any good stories of disasters?
Stream emergency. A stressful situation when one's live stream breaks down or cuts out unexpectedly.
That's interesting. We just had one just then.
That was a simulated stream emergency.
That was a simulated stream emergency. Not really. I don't do. Oh, I do things live. But really, it's more about getting a good, workable internet so I can do my day-to-day job.
Hey, do you ever live stream?
Yeah, I do.
You sometimes speak at conferences, right?
Yeah, so twitch.tv/Geoffrey Huntley. I do public speaking, and I normally use Speedify when I'm doing anything to do with Twitch or video calls, etc. Specifically because it's not necessarily about the stream emergency, just in case it drops out. It's the comfort knowing I can just walk between a room. Like I just pick the tablet up and just go between things. So this is why I love the iPad. I'll be on a call with co-workers, and I'll just grab the iPad and I'll just walk. And then when the house Wi-Fi drops out, or the van Wi-Fi drops out, I can just it just works. Like I just falls back to the inbuilt 4G.
Yeah, that's good. So what advice do you have for anyone who wants to follow you on this life and get out on the road?
There's a lot of BS on Instagram that show a life. I would say that whilst it is lovely to have all this and has your office, it is a harder life. It is highly structured. It's very highly structured, but at the same time unstructured. Like you need to build your routines, your disciplines. It gets easier with time. Like things like if you're having to worry about having interconnectivity or electricity or any of those things, you're now worrying about those concerns that your co-workers would not have to worry about. So that can start impacting other aspects. When you're worrying about low-level things like that, and because they're continually changing, that becomes a distraction. So what you want to do is you want to. There's no other way just to get out there and start doing it. If you want to do it, you can look at Instagram for a long time and plan everything and get your perfect build. But really, all you need is a vehicle, and then you throw a sleeping bag in the back, and then start doing it. In time, you start from like tanks of water to a proper water underneath your vehicle, to just backpack routers, to proper antennas on your van, running off USB battery packs, USB-C battery packs. That's the beautiful thing of an iPhone, iPad, or even an M1. Everything runs off USB-C, so you can get these massive battery packs. So initially, last year when I was doing all the stuff with the research with the digital contact tracing, I had no electricity in my van. I was just driving around Australia, and I had 4 USB battery packs. I was just rotating in and out of 2700 milliamp hour battery packs. You don't need much. You need a vehicle. And life on the road will teach you what you need to know, and you develop routines and everything. But you really want to raise your abstraction as soon as possible. People go camping to lower their abstraction. They go to they go to live life without internet. They live life to escape, right? Well, the primitive life is nice at first. It's very relaxing. But if the primitive life is your full-time life, and then you also have to interact with the modern society and world, you don't want to be having a primitive living. So you want to raise your abstraction up and find ways where you get your comfort. And for me, that is never having to worry about battery, never having to worry about internet, never having to worry about water or food.
All right.
But
it seems like we are getting some questions here, aren't we? We're getting comments. How you're making it sound exciting and luxurious.
It's good and bad. This way, in a small 7-meter long vehicle, it only takes about 10 minutes for the vehicle to get super untidy, and you get super frustrated because there's not much space. So you're always cleaning. There are downsides. Kane, your question is, I sound like Dave Goggins. I've never heard of him. I'm gonna have to go look him up.
Neither have I.
Yeah, could you help me out there? Who's Dave Goggins?
I don't know.
If you look at I have to look it up, but if you look at the origins of Australians, we're actually the entire notion of a swagman and people who travel is really ingrained into our culture historically. And now with people working remotely, we're going to get digital swagmen. So not sure who Dave is, but I guess I'm a little bit like a digital swagman in that sense.
Yeah. All right. So do you watch any live streamers, any podcasts? I mean, are there any content creators who you find really inspirational?
I don't. I now really live as much as possible a really minimalist lifestyle, reducing social media, reducing content I consume, just focusing on what I like. I will say though, there's a person called Geoffrey, and he's put together a team of live coders, software developers that are teaching people how to program. And I'm always happy to plug Jeff because they're doing something really good in that sense. We're now getting into the point where people are doing education via Twitch instead of Twitch being like watching someone play games, or you're now seeing it become things like watch people knit or watch people create stuff, and that's lovely. There was a good example last year where the the PM of New Zealand, Jacinta, dropped into a live streamer, and the person was doing wood carvings, and they did a live interview in the back. So it's really lovely to see like the growth of live streaming, but I don't actively consume.
That's fair enough. So what do you think's how much more, like, do you think a lot of people are going to follow you? Is this the future of remote work, or?
I don't know. If you're 20 something and you're watching this and you're dropping $10,000 to $20,000 a year in rent in Sydney, and you look at the cost of housing in Sydney, and you can work anywhere in the world, you're mad to stay in Sydney. You're absolutely mad to stay in Sydney.
And Wall Street Journal had a similar story about a pair of people in Manhattan who bought themselves an RV and now they're sitting in Wyoming.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be an RV. It could be, the point being is you can go country, you get yourself a nice block of land for a couple $100,000, a house for 100-ish extra, and like everyone's going to look at you funny, like, because you're living life very differently. But when you have a house over your head and everyone else is like 60 and paying off, still like only just paying off their home loans, and they're living with all this financial stress, and you've been like sitting happily for many, many years, they're going to be jealous and envious. So if you're younger and you're in IT and you can work remotely, consider what remote work and how you can make that work for you by living a little bit differently.
Yeah. But, these days you have to have good internet. And I feel like between things like Starlink and Speedify and 5G, it's now possible to take internet out to places where in the past they would have charged you an arm and a leg to run a fiber optic cable out there, right? I mean, DSL is not good enough.
So I grew up in outside broadcast. My dad did a lot of stuff with television, and so outside broadcast bands, etc. So this is kind of continuing on how I've been raised, a little bit nomadic and a little bit in broadcast. But yeah, the old school like Iridium satellite and all those they still charge per meg, and it's such ripe for disruption. And Starlink is just so exciting because like if Starlink enters space, into the area, we're going to get other people entering the area. We're going to get some competition, and all of a sudden we're going to start seeing people hopefully living happier lives. Like just if they want to live in a log cabin and work remotely, and a log cabin is where they do their best artistic work, put a Starlink on there and go do that best work.
So when we first launched Speedify, Iridium was what, 7,600 bits per second, right? It was 7K.
It's not even an ISDN link. Like an ISDN link is 14.4.
I mean, it was an old school modem, right? So I went out and met with them, and I said, maybe we should do something together, right? Because if you put a couple of your phones together, you might get something that somebody could actually use for internet. And they say, we have a customer who built this already for themselves. I said, who? They're like, well, they're in Antarctica and they have 50 of our phones lined up. Yeah. I was like, okay, whoever this person is, they had enough of a need that they built something like Speedify themselves. And just used it for themselves in Antarctica. So that was a weird little story. The other weird story, right, is that they had a SpaceX model rocket in their conference room long before SpaceX was. Oh, nice. We've got people watching via Starlink. Long before people all knew about SpaceX. I was like, wait, that's Elon Musk's new company. What's going on there? They're like, Elon Musk has stalked our CEO. Every time our CEO travels, it turns out Elon Musk is staying in the same hotel and asking if he can launch. Like, he's literally following him around, which I found so inspirational to realize that a guy like Elon Musk, he's still hustling, right? When he wants to make a sale, he does all these crazy things. He follows people around if they're the one of the 3 or 4 people he thinks he could sell stuff to. Just odd little story.
It's not that odd. I've been thinking about hustling. There's when I'm camping, people want internet, and often I've been places like Oban, New South Wales. It's a beautiful water reservoir that's a stocked fishing reserve, and like you get a lot of campers coming through there. And I remember one time there was a lady who was doing online counseling courses, like video calls, like just like this, and that's how she earned her income. But she was completely stressing about her internet, and she was walking around with her phone, and she just tapped on the door of my van. It's like, is that you? Is that internet link there? Because it's not just one internet link. I expose out the one internet link plus separately all the different networks to separate Wi-Fi hotspot spots. And it goes, is that you? Like, and I go, yeah. It's like, I really need to do a class. Can I use your internet? So I'm like, yeah, that's no problem. So it turns into like almost a gift economy. So like, I need something. I'll give you internet, or maybe the internet connectivity could be sold as a hotspot. People want internet. There's more and more people hit the road. If you're camping next to someone, it's just like it's the modern day equivalent of having a guitar for anyone who works remotely. Like, sit down, here's something I can do to, like, a gift to the group, play an instrument, or here's some internet, so you can do your job.
It's only a gift if you're better than me at playing guitar. I love playing guitar, but I'm terrible. Might be part of what I like about it. All right. What else? So we talked about hardware. We talked about software. Well, what other apps are you using? Are there other apps you're using a lot of these days? Everything's in a web browser now.
Everything's a web browser now. I've been on the iPad. I've been using a thing called Bink Terminal. Bink Terminal is SSH plus Mosh terminal. It's lovely. If you don't know Mosh, you need to, if you're in technology and you do things with consoles and terminals, you need to get Mosh. Mosh is a free open source program. It runs as a server that alongside of SSH. And what it does is it makes it work with multi-home internet connections. So I can, like, close this lid of this iPad, and then I open it back up when I get to a friend's house, or get home from work, or whatever your scenario.
So it keeps the session alive on the server even if you disconnect for a little while. Yeah.
And then as soon as the client opens up again, so you turn on the iPad, it reconnects to the server, and it just keeps working. And normally, if you hop between different networks with SSH, it drops your network connection. Or if there's high packet loss, it just drops, and then all of a sudden you spend all this time reconnecting and going through the handshake process. With Mosh, you don't need to do that. It's lovely. So, and also it works with high latency, really, really high latency. It's got, like, local echo with a corrective algorithm, and it works. So you could be on a train, traveling on a train, and that just, like, with really, really high latency, because you're going through a tunnel with high packet loss, and the connection doesn't drop out. It becomes unresponsive, but as soon as it's able to flush the buffer, it works. So I use an iPad client, and I run, and that has Mosh support in it. And then from there I have, and that's the Bink terminal, and on the server I run Mosh.
Yeah. That sounds fantastic, right? Because let's be honest, if things didn't restart, you could disconnect for a few seconds and not notice, right? I mean, you spend so much time just kind of looking at things, and then you just type a couple characters and hit return, right? There's so little bandwidth. Yeah. So Mosh, that's a good tip.
Mosh, definitely, if you're in tech, Mosh. Speedify for your network links, of course. Gitpod is actually really, really good software. So gitpod.io allows you to do software development from anywhere, any device in the cloud, which is lovely. Highly recommend looking into it, especially if you're doing workshops or teaching. Because if you move your software development into a web browser, into the cloud, if you're running a workshop or a classroom full of students, they can turn up on an iPad or a Chromebook or a Mac or a Windows, and they should be able. They turn up. People turn up to do workshops because they want to learn what you want to teach them. But if they've got this large prerequisite tasks of stuff they need to do, or their computer's not set up right, then all of a sudden you spend 2 hours setting people up on their computers, and you haven't actually taught anything. And there's always someone who doesn't do all the prerequisites. So using something like Gitpod, just getting your classroom running in the browser, you just give them a link and they can start their work immediately. So Taco, your question is, what is the iPad app? It's Bink Terminal, BINK, or it's BLINK, Bink Terminal for Mac. It's about $20, but completely worth it.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, online teaching with the codes. I mean, my kids are both sort of done with virtual classes, right? So my daughter went back to Georgetown, signed up for 5 classes, 4 live, 1 virtual, called at the end of the first week, and she said, I cannot even listen to the virtual class anymore. I have to drop it. I can't pay attention anymore. I'm just done with virtual. But I think these sort of tools for a coding class where people actually type in the editor and, the teacher can kind of pop in and talk to them about stuff, that's probably totally different. That's probably better than live in some ways.
Yeah, the problem with, well, even just watching this, I hope people are enjoying the content, they're finding intellectually stimulating. It's one way, right? When you're doing software development, it's 2-way. So you actually engage in doing an activity. So it is different to just watching a stream.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Any other questions, people in the audience? We are answering them if you post. So, not going to have a stream this Thursday. Normally we do them Tuesdays and Thursdays. My nephew is getting married. Taking the day off. Do not bother me. All right.
Wise choice.
All right. Apologies if you already covered it, but could you speak to how you use your Wi-Fi AP versus the mesh device?
Yeah, sure. In the van, I'm using a Unify Dream Machine. It's overkill. It's complete overkill, and it uses a lot of power, way too much power. The reason I use that is because I use Unify. I have Unify security cameras hang on the van, and I back the footage offsite because it's my house, and people put security cameras on their house, and this is my house. So I use the UDM because it's an integrated solution that just works. There's enough complexity in my networking environment where I've got all these different internet links where I don't want to be doing pfSense. pfSense is lovely software, but I don't want to roll my own router. What I wanted to do was roll the things that I couldn't buy, which is all the different internet links, and then I buy Speedify, and then I merge that, and then I plug that into something that I can also buy. Because I want to be able to focus on work, it's a production system, not tinkering. So the difference between the Wi-Fi AP and the mesh device, I have 2 Wi-Fi access points. The van itself is insulated to keep the sun out. Even though there's solar panels on the roof of the van, they keep a lot of sun out from coming up top. The sun will also be on the sides of the van, and also the bitumen, the tarmac, radiates heat up from the bottom. So the entire thing of the van is insulated, but that also interferes with signals. So I have an internal Wi-Fi access point, and then I have an external Wi-Fi access point. I run the internal with less transmission power, and I run the external one with full transmission power. And I haven't really done it yet, but there would be scenarios like probably can't see it, but over there there's a PowerPoint. Let's go have a look.
All right.
Over
Live
there is
streaming.
PowerPoint. Yeah. So, like, oh, they've locked it. That's what you're always doing. If people are wondering what van life's like, it's always about walking around looking for PowerPoints. Last week that was unlocked, so you're always eyeballing places where you can like set up. Like, this is a nice little amphitheater, and like it's got shelter against for rain, etc. But getting back onto it is a mesh device, because you can set up a repeater. Like if my vehicle's back there and that's got high transmission power running a mesh device, and I've got a PowerPoint right there, I could, in my backpack, have a mesh Wi-Fi access point, and then I can repeat that signal.
Yeah.
Haven't had to do it yet, but that's the idea.
Nice. I love this IRL action.
Yeah, so I would use probably a directional antenna pointed towards the van in that case, but never had to do it, need to do it. But I could.
Nice. All right, that was a great question. Does anyone else have questions? We are still answering them here. Keep asking. All right. So you're gonna do this forever? What are, any thoughts on
Not forever.
on your future?
It's similar to the story in the narrative of the Googler in the van, right? You can do this forever, but you need to plan accordingly. Like, I'll explain it. Back 2 years ago, I was camping with a bunch of hippies, like in a forest, like 500 hippies for a month, and it was the most wild experience. And one thing I learned from that is those people really know how to live. It's a great lifestyle, but you need to think long term, right? You don't necessarily want to be 60 and not have a home or a place to live. Like, your health will deteriorate as you get older. I could become ill, right? Or I become incapable of driving. I could lose my eyesight. I could lose an arm. Like, if all these things were to happen, like, I can't drive a vehicle. If I can't drive a vehicle, I don't have a home, etc. So you got to think long term. So long term for me is safety net. I've already got a parcel of land, and then build on that, and then I have a safety net, and then I can just travel for as long as I like, knowing that I have a safety net there.
Yeah.
So long term and short term. We have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so you've got a rooftop tent.
With a rooftop tent. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So for antenna placements, you speak with the manufacturer of the antenna, or an RF specialist. Some antennas need what's called a grounding plane, like a minimum amount of like metal to mount it on to actually get for it to have maximum performance. The antennas I use don't need a grounding plane. So that's one of the first things you want to look into when you're in RF. So in Australia, there's I use a company called rfshop.com.au, and they helped me out with a whole bunch of questions in the end. But as for antenna replacement, if it's on a vehicle, there's not much real difference with the antenna placement. Like, yeah, you can put it in a good place. It's really not much difference. Because it depends if you're going to do a unidirectional or omnidirectional antenna. Like, if you're going to do a unidirectional antenna, that means the direction of which you park your vehicle matters. And let me tell you, that's annoying. That's really annoying. Like you go into a caravan park, you see all these grey nomads, and they get out their chocks and they want to get their caravan perfectly level. And they do all these elaborate setup and tear down tasks, whereas I just get in a van and drive. So you want to remove these concerns if I'm pointing north or west or any of that stuff. And you don't even know where your nearest tower is going to be. So I went for an omnidirectional antenna, and I recommend on a vehicle you would do the same.
There are some really low profile omnidirectional vehicle mounted antennas.
Very low.
I haven't been shopping for these things for a while, but there used to be 1.5 inch tall, little, almost K-cup size things. Of course, you have to drill a hole through your roof, but
yeah, there are proper vehicle ones. The one I'm using, I guess they're normally for a house, but then again, it's a house on wheels. So placement. So think about grounding planes, think about unidirectional versus omni. Uni is great if you're say that I'm going to sit here and going to be set up for a week and there's absolutely no network connectivity, then you might decide to climb a tree, strap a pole to it, and then you're good to go. But you don't need to think about an omni and then think about interference. I thought a lot on the placement of in the van, the interference of if there's anything obstructing, like any metal in front of the antenna when I was mounting the omnidirectional antennas on the back. In the end, I do have some interference in the sense of it's very packed on the top of the vehicle, but there's nothing I can do. It's better than nothing. And it's better than not having the antennas. So just think about any obstructions to your signal. What would obstruct your signal? Then that's really simple. No obstructions, grounding plane, uni versus omni, and a high quality thing, and speak on RF guy.
Nice. Yeah, and go Google vehicle mount antennas. There's a lot of interesting stuff out there.
And don't bother with signal boosters. Do not bother with signal boosters. The way signal boosters work is they take a small a marginal network connection, marginal signal, and they work as a base station that repeats it. So they're amplifier. Right. So they're useful if you want to, say, amplify a marginal network connectivity for a cell phone, because a cell phone doesn't have external antennas. But if you're amplifying a marginal connection so that your modems right next door to it, which have really good antennas on it, are also getting a marginal connection, there is no point. I see no point to it. And you can do Wi-Fi calling and SMS calling here in Australia. So I saw no point going down the point of a cell phone booster like a Selfie. They cost almost $1,500 before installation. And the only upside benefit was getting mobile coverage on my phone and providing external antenna to my phone. But I don't need that because I've got really good antennas and modems. So
yeah, the people I know who have had success with those are people who are in this solid structure, right? And so they put that on the roof, so it can beam down into the like that. For some reason, they're
Correct.
underground, or they're in this crazy stone building, right? And so they mount this on the roof, and it bounces the signal into the weird place they're in. But I don't think that really applies to
That's the type of scenarios. Like what you do is you put a base station on top that catches the signal. You run a cable from the top of the base station down the walls through the conduit into your techno bunker, and then from there you have the repeater, that would repeat the marginal top network connection and to the down there, and then all your devices around you would have LTE signal. On a vehicle, it does work if you just want to have if you wanted to have an external antenna to an iPhone, because there's no way to plug an external antenna into an iPhone. So you're essentially paying $1,500, whatever it is, to have an external antenna for your mobile device. But you already have external antennas, and there's no need for the repeater and the booster.
Right. Cool. All right. I think we're getting close to an hour here. In fact, I think we're at an hour. So I'm going to say thank you. I don't want to use up too much of your valuable data. So thank you so much, Jeff. This was awesome. This was inspirational. Makes me feel sad that I'm still sitting here in my office when I could be out and about. Obviously, I've got Speedify.
Yeah. Think about how if you have the luxury and the privilege, it really is a privilege to be able to work remotely. Remember, I brought up the topic of the tradies in construction workers in Melbourne yesterday, and everything's turning violent. They can't work. They can't earn an income. They can't work remotely, and that's not great. So it really is a privilege to be able to work remotely. And if you do have the ability to work remotely, think about how you make it work for you. Like, grab a chair, go down to your local park, grab a couple of hotspots, use Speedify, merge them together, and just relax. You do make it work for you, and consider if you're younger, a different life, a different path. You don't need to do a $900,000 a year mortgage when the places in the country where you can buy a house for $250,000 and retire early. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so thank you, everybody. People are saying thank you, and like, subscribe. We put up his blog before. Go read his stuff. There it is, ghuntley.com. /internet is the one that goes on about us, but there are other posts there. You just go to ghuntley.com. All kinds of stuff about van life and the secrets to making it work. And I really enjoy it. So, all right.
Thanks, Alex. You. Until next time.
I was going to say good night, but I guess it's good.
The day is just starting.
Cool. Have fun.
Cheers.